I've been musing on the concept of, is God prideful? It seems very prideful. Why does he demand our worship? Even if God were creator, why do I need worship? Why does he deserve that? I think this is very interesting because actually you do understand that. This is a very basic principle that makes us human. And if you consider yourself a good human in any semblance of this word, I would argue that you actually do believe in this principle. In the same way that you wouldn't go to someone's house and you wouldn't raid their fridge and eat their food and use up all their groceries, use their toilet, sleep in their bed, and then just be like, why do I have to thank you? I don't understand why I have to recognize you. That's just a social taboo. In the same way, you see this a lot in post-colonial reconciliation movements, I will phrase it as, in North America and Canada, where it's become a common practice to acknowledge the land that you're on. You'll see this happening in churches and universities and other public spaces where they'll recognize the group of people that have lived here and come before the settlers. Now, whether you're a Caucasian, whether you come from the lineage of European settlers a couple centuries ago, or if you're like me, an immigrant in the 21st century, either way, we don't trace our origins to this land. And so what we've done now in attempt to initiate reconciliation with the indigenous people that have lived here, that have called this home before we did, is we will recognize their presence. And it's almost an attempt to say, hey, this is your home. I get that this is your land. Thank you. I'm in your home. I'm using your land. I'm using your resources. Thank you. And so I will argue, back to my main point, we actually do understand this very basic principle. So actually, we don't use this logic in other parts of our lives unless you're kind of a really terrible person or a mean person. You don't really think this way. By and large, in the public sphere, academia tends to lean towards the side of the spectrum that's calling that now wrong. And so in that same way, God deserves our praise. God deserves the honor and the glory because you're living on his earth, because you're using his resources. Every day you have his breath in your body. You wake up, and if you have an iPhone or a device, or if you've been educated, if you're literate, these are gifts from God. If you're eating food and you have access to resources and friendship and community, these are things that God created. And so, yes, he is worthy of your praise, recognition. He's worthy of your glory. I think that it's interesting that in one area of our life, we recognize that it's wrong, and that, yes, we should recognize giving thanks and acknowledgement to where it's deserved, but then we won't go the full length and give it to God, who ultimately deserves our glory, praise, and recognition because we're on his earth, we're in his house.